Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Lombardi Time Brews Live, where I'm your host, John Delray, and we're joined again today by partner in life, partner in pod, Claudia. She's here to help us out. So as we get going here, as people may inevitably jump in, one of the first things we're going to talk about is the Packers have been officially selected to go in week one down to Brazil. Yes, it's going to be on Friday night, September 6th. And I have several different thoughts on this. First of all, it sounded like a few weeks ago like Mark Murphy wanted nothing to do with this, and they were willing to use the runway as an excuse and everything. And then all of a sudden he was asked yesterday as the Packers tailgate tour was beginning to go in Wisconsin here, and he had a suddenly different tune, which kind of leads me to believe a couple things. One, the NFL worked with him on a couple of the logistical disadvantages that Murphy was claiming, but then also probably some NFL PR person went, Mark, get with it. Right. So like all of a sudden the Packers are indeed going to Brazil. And I mean, this should be a lot of fun, right? Like the Packers are the most popular team in the country of Brazil per a lot of the NFL's data. You just know that that stadium is going to be rocking down there. So it should be a lot of fun. Couple logistical things in case you were wondering. The game is only going to be on Peacock, the streaming service. So it is available in the local markets of Green Bay and Milwaukee, because that's like the Packers market that's been carved out by the NFL. To the rest of Wisconsin, they don't care. So you have to have Peacock in order to watch this game, or of course, if you're out of state, anything like that. And then other than that, I got to say, like a Friday night for week one, that should be a lot of fun. And if you're going to travel internationally, week one is not the worst time to do it. We saw a couple years ago how traveling to London really just threw the Packers into a funk, right? Like they didn't want to go. That was very apparent. And then it went terribly. First of all, this is a whole new team. But second, now you're doing it in week one. You would have just had a bye the week prior as the preseason was wrapping up. Now you're going on a Friday. And chances are you've got probably the Monday night game, maybe a later Sunday. But the NFL generally gives you an extra little cushion following international games. And maybe by chance, one of the agreements that Mark Murphy was able to muster is maybe a home game at Lambeau in prime time in week two. Like, we just don't know yet. But nonetheless, it's scheduling wise, it does seem to shape up that if you're going to travel international, do it in week one, do it coming off of the preseason bye, and get it out of the way. So that is what they're going to be facing in week one against the Philadelphia Eagles. Also, one other tidbit for you. This is not a Packers home game. The Philadelphia Eagles are technically the home team. So the Packers still get all of their home games this year. So certainly something to be excited about in that regard. And frankly, they don't got to go to Philly now, which that's not a bad thing. So we'll take it. Other news tidbit for you. The Packers, just within like the last half hour, I saw news about this. They signed an individual named Jermon Green. He was a cornerback formerly of the New York Giants. By all accounts, this is kind of a bottom of the roster signing. Of course, you hope it's more than that, but just being real. He started for a few years at the University of Michigan, then was a rookie last year, played in the Giants preseason, gave up a touchdown to Garrett Wilson, it looked like, unfortunately, and then got hurt and cut. So the Packers, at least seeing what they've got there, they signed him to the 90-man roster today. And then the last bit of news for you before we get into the comments, just to update you, because I did this last week, and I like to keep this running list for you, but the Packers' top 30 visits. And I did get a couple questions about this throughout the week, so I just want to explain super quick what it is. A top 30 visit does not mean that the Packers are looking at choosing the player in the first round. Okay, keep that in mind. 2, this is the only real opportunity that they have to fly in a player to actually walk around the facilities, walk Lambeau Field, go through a private workout, get in one-on-one interviews. Like, yeah, they can talk at the combine and try. This is different. This is like full on bringing in the player for a full day, and you just kind of getting to do what you want to do with them for the Packers. So in the last 2 years, 10 of the 60 top 30 visits that the Packers have conducted have wound up being Green Bay Packers. So all of these are notable to at least some regard. Here is the running list. We are up to 20 that we know of at this time. Omar Brown, a defensive back out of Nebraska. Jerrion Jones, corner from Florida State. Michael Hall Jr., the defensive lineman from Ohio State, looked like he was actually in Lambeau today. Adrian Cooper, the linebacker from Texas A&M. Zach Zinter, the interior offensive lineman, Michigan. Christian Boyd, the DL from Northern Iowa. Trevin Wallace, linebacker from Kentucky. Jaquan Shepard, corner from Maryland. Tyler Guyton, offensive tackle from Oklahoma. Keaton Oladapo, safety out of Oregon State. Tyron Harper, linebacker, Missouri. Amarius Mims, offensive tackle, Georgia. Chris Edmonds, defensive back, safety. People are kind of mixed on where he's going to play, but he's coming from Arizona State. Bryce Gallagher, the linebacker from Northwestern. Ray Davis, the running back from Kentucky. Jermaine Burton, the wide receiver from Alabama. Kool-Aid McKinstry, corner from Alabama. Gabriel Murphy, the edge from UCLA. And then the two announced today, Akeem Dent, the safety out of Florida State. And Austin Booker, the edge from Kansas. So there we go. Time for me to stop talking. I'm going to let you hand it off to you and you can take some comments.
All right. Mark says, hey, John.
Hi, Mark.
Chris Hand saying, hey, Jon and Claudia. I would say hello in Brazilian, but I don't want to say something like very I don't know, Brazilian. We'll take it.
I mean, forgive my ignorance, but like, hola? Wouldn't it be hola?
I don't know, but because once you get into South America, some speak Portuguese. Some
Yeah, that's
like
true.
It gets messy down there, but it's all a very Spanish area.
You're acknowledging the one thing we don't want to say, though, Chris.
Right? Yes, we agree because we also don't know Brazilian or whatever language they speak.
Yeah.
Mark says, sorry, hey Claudia as well. It's okay, Mark. Hi. David was saying, hi, Claudia, kick your husband and make him let you say something.
Okay, rude. I handle the intros in the news. Okay, David?
True.
We know how this goes.
That is true. One also tidbit that I wanted to chuck into your little intro.
Mm-hmm.
You can't view it if you're not in the Green Bay or Milwaukee area because the opening game, because it's on Peacock. However, we will have a watch party.
Oh, yeah.
You will be
certainly
able to
true.
watch.
Yeah, certainly.
So you won't see the game, but you can hear the game from two pretty cool
You know what?
people.
And speaking of watch parties, if you didn't know, we will be here for every single pick of the draft.
Indeed.
Us. You know, I see other channels, and there's nothing against them, but like they got all this frill, all this pageantry. No, you want the draft. You want to just talk about the picks and football and not have all these other people stuff. We're here.
And not just the
We'll
first
be here
round.
every minute.
Not just the first and second day. We are
All
here
7.
all day. Every day that there's a draft.
Yeah, that's true.
So we'll be here. Right. Steve saying Van Ness and Cooper DeJean have been training together. That's cool to know. Yeah, because they used to play together, right?
Well, yeah, they were both Iowa Hawkeyes together. And yes, that picture's been released now of Lucas Van Ness. And I don't know if you saw it, but Lucas Van Ness looks bigger in that picture. I don't know if it was the angle or what, but downright getting superhero arms on himself. Like Cooper DeJean is like 6'2", a little over 200 pounds, and he was dwarfed next to Lucas Van Ness. So
what's one of his nicknames? Hercules.
Hercules,
They
that's
call
right.
That for a reason.
So yeah, they were training together. It's not ultimately surprising because they were former teammates at Iowa, but you know, maybe Lucas Van Ness was giving him a couple selling points on Green Bay.
David saying, John, I know Claudia was jumping at the bit to talk.
Yeah. So
I'm
I
used
know.
to it.
So that is basically the news of the week. Kind of ultimately been a slow news week. The biggest development being these top 30 visits. And then also, of course, the news about Brazil, which frankly, I'm kind of excited for. I think oftentimes, like, yes, Lambeau has a mystique to it, right? And everything. But man, that stadium in Brazil is just going to lose its top when the Packers come out. And I think that that's just going to be a lot of fun. And even for us here, without massive time zone changes, no matter where you are in the States, it's just going to be a Friday night. Should have a real party atmosphere to it. Should be a great kickoff to the season, no doubt about it.
Steve, have I been training Musgrave to stay on his feet more this year? I hope so.
That's the hope, right?
I hope that all of my screaming from last season had made impact, went through the waves.
I can only hope.
Yep. Chris Hand saying Atlanta getting Kevin King. Dang, I don't know what to say, but bah!
You know, that's something I did not talk about in the news because I don't generally bring up former Packers. But yes, indeed, Kevin King has signed with the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, I think he's gotten a little bit of a bad rap. Like there were glimpses in Green Bay where he did perform quite well. And he put out this piece. I forget what media channel it was on last year, but he detailed really strongly like his struggles through those injuries, and then his personal struggles trying to stay on the field, and how he just couldn't do it, and how he was trying to get back into the NFL, and Atlanta giving him that chance. It's going to be really interesting to see if this is a slightly older, maybe more durable Kevin King, or if this is just offseason fodder for the Falcons to bring in, see what he's got left, and then move on from. So, we're going to see. Yeah, very interesting.
Atlanta right now. I think Atlanta's just sad.
Well, I mean, yeah, the offense should be great, though. Captain Cabbles.
YouTube, notify me with my face. I'm streaming. Sorry I'm late.
Hey, we are here. We're here for you no matter what.
And as Mark says, better late than
That's
never.
the truth. That's the truth.
Kevin Kebble's also saying, Packers signed a former Big Ten corner. If you were here on time, you would have seen the intro.
But yeah, that is true. Jermon Green, and I gotta believe that this is not changing their draft plans. Like, this is a guy who is a late round selection to the Giants, played only in their preseason, and then didn't play at all for the Giants in the regular season before he had an injury end his season. So might they find a diamond in the rough here? Yeah, certainly. But is this the kind of signing, even right before the draft, that is going to alter their intentions? No, like not one bit. This may be a player that Brian Gutekunst had his eye on in last year's draft, and now all of a sudden he's just out there, and Brian's like, well, I got the roster space. Let's just bring him in and see if he still can do anything. Maybe kind of like Atlanta and Kevin King in that regard. So that would be my guess. I still think cornerback is very, very high on the top of needs list for the Green Bay Packers. Especially, I saw, I believe it was Tyler Brook put out on Twitter yesterday that he doesn't understand why corner is being talked about as such a need for the Packers. And the reality is, look, they've got Jair, and Jair, I don't want to say is getting increasingly banged up, but like, he is getting older, right? We're seeing him miss a number of games. And then opposite Jair, you've got last year's 7th round pick, Carrington Valentine, who did a lot of great work, certainly. But then you've also got Eric Stokes, who frankly is kind of a massive question mark. And looking ahead for roster planning purposes, there aren't that many corners on the roster. I think it's absolutely one of the top needs out there. And frankly, a lot of you know my preference. I would rather spend a first-round pick on this draft on a corner than I would a tackle, because I think the value, the talent level at tackle is so dramatically higher than corner. You got to get one of the top corners if you're going to get one. That's my take on it for sure. Ooh, Mark, don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you, Mark.
You're hired. We don't hire people, but you're hired. Steve saying the one guy we hope we draft day 3 is it Keaton or Cotton?
Keaton.
Keaton. What?
Yeah. Oladopa. From Oregon State. Yeah.
You gotta make my job hard.
He's one of my favorites for a while, Steve.
Can't y'all be named Steve?
But the thing is, he is getting a lot of buzz to potentially move up. Like, he's been being talked about a lot more recently. I should also say, too, that like NFL boards have been pretty well done for a while. Like, so when we talk about guys accelerating up or down the draft boards, that's more so just kind of like the media catching up. It's more so like us just learning more information that a lot of NFL teams already know. So when you hear of a lot of conversation of like Keaton potentially being drafted in now like round 3, round 4, well, that's because media people are getting informed from NFL teams of like, hey, you've been low on him for a while. Wink, wink. So like, it's that kind of thing. The NFL boards have been relatively solidified. Really, the one thing that might change boards is like you might remove a guy because of medicals once you actually get him in-house and get a chance to look at him. If a combine is drastically different than a team expected it to be, or in the case of someone like Tavondre Sweat, he's got a little bit of a reputation of being a party animal, and then he goes and gets himself a DWI 3 weeks before the draft. That's a really good way to have a lot of teams take you off board. So I should say that. Now, in regards to Oladopo, it looks like he may now be someone like round 3, round 4. But you want to talk about ultra aggressive, certainly would fill the box safety role, maybe not as a rookie, but can grow into it because there is some over aggression to his game, I would say. I would be all for that selection. Absolutely. Just like I was Anthony Johnson Jr. last year.
Kevin Kibble saying, hot take, edge is a need. Jeff's scheme is all about hitting the quarterback before the crosser comes open.
Mm-hmm.
Jefferson, PTSD. So they need pass rushers, especially with JJ nearing the end of the contract and the ACL.
Yeah, I think from a roster building standpoint, you really can't plan on Kingsley Enagbare at all this year. It was kind of late in the year that he was ACL. I think if you get him for some kind of time, it's more luxury than anything. But I'm inclined to agree. Realistically, they're 3 deep at edge. And Preston Smith, we seem to be on this year-to-year status with him as he continues to age. I know you and I were like-minded in that, like, he's going to be around this year, and then indeed he is. But nonetheless, we are eventually going to hit the end of that road. So then you're looking at Rashawn, LVN, and Enagbare, whose contract is coming up sooner rather than later as well. So with that in mind, edge is a need. The one thing that I did want to highlight that I think is notable is someone like an Austin Booker is a lighter edge. Generally, they like their edges, per Goot's history of both signing and drafting, to be 265 plus. But was that a consequence of Joe Barry's defense? Is he perhaps modifying some of the parameters for Hafley now? I'm going to talk about that a bunch on Friday. We don't know. Like, we can't possibly know yet. But the other thing that we've seen is Saleh with the Jets, Shanahan with Frisco. They've added a couple smaller edges in recent years. Green Bay has not yet. And is this the year? Because both Gabriel Murphy and Austin Booker in their top 30 visit list, they're both smaller, 240, 245. Going to be interesting to see if Green Bay actually decides to add one or not this year.
Dan saying, good afternoon to you both. Do you think we can afford to draft with a crystal ball, just like we did with LVN and Rashawn, or do we need someone who starts day one?
Really good question, Dan. And hello. I would just say, I would draw a couple distinctions here, and it depends what position. For instance, if they break their historical precedents and pick someone who's an interior offensive lineman in round 1, let's say Graham Barton, right? Let's say they actually pick him in round 1. That dude better be starting at right guard in day 1. Like, if they're going to spend that capital on a guard, it better be a starter. Other positions like edge, like you note with LVN, you can take a little bit more grace in the understanding of like, well, we're choosing him for his athletic traits and his potential, but we understand that there's a lot of refinement required there yet. So we could take our time. Ultimately, I would love to see the Packers fill, like, I'm not saying draft for need, but plug a hole on day 1, right? But I understand if they go with something like edge, even something like corner. That corner may be in a little bit of rotation for half of their rookie year or something like that until they learn the position more. Wide receiver certainly would be in that category as well. So for me, the question, like, I'd love them to plug a hole on day 1, but ultimately whether they need a starter or not, it kind of depends on the position in my mind.
Mark saying, I like Darius Robinson at defensive.
Yeah, really interesting player, kind of a tweener, big for defensive end style. Last time I checked, he was around like 290, 295, which would be bulky for some of their edges. Generally, like I said, they like them 265 plus, but generally topping out like 285. So 290, like that would be big for an edge for them. So the question is, where exactly would he go on their line in this new Hafley defense? Perhaps more of in like the defensive tackle realm. In which case, would they be looking at that in round 1, early round 2? I don't know. Maybe it just wouldn't be tremendously likely because Wyatt was very much an outlier that way. But he's a very fun player to watch, and goodness knows he's powerful. That you can absolutely say about Robinson.
Mark also saying, I see this draft as a lot of good players, but not as many great.
Yeah, I would actually be inclined to agree with that assessment. I think like if you're looking like 1 through 10, there are some very, very good prospects, right? Like Joe Alt, just to steal another name, Joe, like he may just walk into the league and start at left tackle for like 15 years and none of us even blink about it. Like it's totally possible, right? So I think there's some very, very elite talent up at the top. And then you just kind of get this watering down quickly in round 1 to a whole bunch of very, very good players, but not necessarily elite at their positions. And then that kind of stays that way, like all the way down through like bottom round 3, mid 3, like that kind of range. The true meat of this draft seems to be picks like 20 through 100? Like something like that. So this is a good year for the Packers to have stockpiled 2s and 3s because they're just going to get more bites at the apple and what a lot of people consider to be the main meat of this draft.
He's saying, if anyone that plays Madden 24, I created this year's draft class with most of the top draft players. Steve Van Ness, very nice, and 2024 updated. I hope everyone enjoys the draft class and have fun.
There you go, people. Go download it. Go download it. Go have fun.
Ooh, I like this question.
Yeah.
Kevin Kells, who is a player to you that might not do as well in this new defense? It's a good question.
So I've given this some thought, and it's kind of the reason why it's a little difficult to pigeonhole for me is because the defense are about as drastically different as you can get, right? Like you're going from soft zone to what is anticipated to be a lot of press man. And even if it's not press man, it's going to be hyper aggressive. So I've been thinking about positional switches. And one guy that comes to mind for me that's a little odd is Devontae Wyatt. So in 3-4, it made a lot of sense for him to be an end. He could use some pass rush prowess. They could even line him up over the tackle at different times, depending on their formation subtleties. Kicking him exclusively into the interior, more of like a true defensive tackle role, I just wonder about, is his speed, is his first step still going to be as effective regularly down in and down out as what we saw him last year, getting pressure after pressure after pressure? So he's one player that I at least have on the radar as like potential regression, at least statistically, maybe incoming for Wyatt. Other than that, I think we might see some interesting position switches. For instance, Carl Brooks, Kobe Wooden, I've talked about them before. Are they actually going to be more edges now? In which case, then we're reducing the edge need overall in the draft. It's possible. Brooks played a ton of edge in college, and Kobe Wooden had, when he was drafted, more of the body style of an edge anyway. So, like, I think there's a lot of unknowns. But if you're going to make me pick one, I got to go with Wyatt. That's where I'd go for now.
Steve asking, John, do you see Goody trading up or staying put at 25 or trading out? I can see him moving up.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, Steve. I think the more likely of the bunch is to trade up. In that he has some, we've seen this before. Like he's traded up for Jordan Love. He's traded up for Darnell Savage. Like Goot is very unlike Ted that way. Ted Thompson was more likely to trade back. Goot's more likely to like go get his guy. And I think this is the kind of draft where he's looking over how some positions are incredibly deep, like tackle, like wide receiver, and other positions, while having some talent in later rounds, are more top heavy. So maybe he falls in love with a Cooper DeJean or a Tyrion Arnold or even a Quinion Mitchell. And he says, I need to get one. And we've got the extra capital to do it. This is the year to throw a bunch of picks and move up. So yeah, I think your reasoning is very sound. I think which much more likely he kicks up than he would kick back in this draft, but we'll see.
Captain Kebble's saying, I do think Wyatt will be like for how fast he wins, but I can see the logic you're presenting. If he could finish a tackle or sack, my goodness, he would be a double.
Oh, there's no doubt about that, right? And I think it's just like, yeah, I do agree. I think his speed should still do well. It's just his first step. Will it be as effective when he might face more bulk down in and down out? That's kind of my main concern here. But you're right. I mean, if he stops flying past quarterbacks and running backs, he's going to become a menace if he can maintain his pressure level from this last year. When he actually, not a lot of people talk about it, but he was in the top 25 league-wide. It's something really close to that of pressures for interior defensive linemen. Yeah, good year.
Chad saying, speaking on what you were just on, I could see Brooks playing some defensive end along with Wooden. Brooks, who has been very effective at defensive end in college. As I'm writing this, you just brought this up.
Hi, Chad. Yeah, that's something I've been toying with too. Another position potential change would be someone like Anthony Johnson Jr. Like, yeah, he profiled in the NFL more as a safety, but he was at Iowa State for 5 years. 4 of them were spent as a corner. And then when he switched to safety for his 5th year, it was considered to hurt his draft stock. So if the Packers want to like go get 4 safeties in this draft and Goot just goes wild, then maybe Anthony Johnson Jr. kicks over to corner. Like he's got the flexibility. And so it's one that I've wondered about depending on what they do here. But yeah, you and I like-minded with Brooks and Wooden.
Johnson saying, John, sorry I'm late. Any thoughts on Javon Green, the cornerback we just signed? Apologies if you've already addressed it.
Oh, all good. I did talk about it a little bit at the top. I just give a quick summary here. I think it's a bottom of the roster move. Of course, you hope to find a diamond in the rough, but realistically, this is probably someone that Goot liked in the draft process last year and then wasn't able to pick. So now that he's a free agent, Goot just goes and signs him, adds him to the roster, and they're going to see what he's got. And if it's nothing, no harm, no foul. That's the way I view this pretty briefly.
David saying, always draft for need, please.
I mean, yes and no. I think, right now they're on the precipice of a true contention window, and in times like that, generally speaking, as a window is opening and not closing like we've seen in the last few years, they may be more likely to plug a hole or something. But at the same time, the wide receiver position is a great example. The wide receiver position is stacked, right? I mean, Reed, Watson, Dobbs, et cetera, Milton, they've got a bunch.
Oh, well.
It also would not shock me if this is the year that Goot actually spends a first-round pick on a wide receiver and we all lose our freaking minds, because this wide receiver class is so good. And contractually speaking, they've only got Watson and Dobbs for 2 more seasons. So it is time to at least start turning the wheels a little about, well, if not all these guys are going to get extended, then what are we going to do? So I see both sides, but I personally am in the camp of round 1 this year. There's enough needs. There's enough holes. Plug one. It's not interior offensive line.
Kevin Keppel saying, I think no one who had picked 25 has stayed there in 10 years. Trade for a player or up or down. Yeah,
actually, I saw that little thing. It's either 7 or 10 years, but yeah, I saw that too. Pick 25 is not, no one makes it their dream home. They move around. It's a starter home. And you move some picks. Yeah.
So you're saying, do you see them drafting a wide receiver this year?
I do.
If they do, I hope it's Malik Washington from Virginia on day 3.
Yeah, I've looked into Washington a little bit. I do recall with his sizing that he was a little under how they generally like them, unless they're considering him a slot. Because I don't remember his exact sizing off the top of my head, but I know it was on the small side. I can tell you one receiver that I really genuinely like, and I think would be a very good fit for them. I know Brandy's talked about him before, would be like Johnny Wilson out of FSU. I know there's some issues there, some consistency problems as well, but dude's big, dude's fast, and the dude run blocks his head off. If ever there were a Matt LaFleurian type at wide receiver, it's Johnny Wilson out of FSU. So I think that would be a very, very fun match, as well as he's not quite as fast as Watson, but as well as a little insurance policy if those hamstring issues don't actually get resolved for Christian. So I wouldn't be shocked if they're at least entertaining it. Maybe round 1 isn't the most likely, but round 2, round 3, one of those 4 picks, I could very well see that being a wide receiver, especially given how good this class is.
Jonathan saying, Dobbs deserves a lifetime contract for what he did to the Cowboys. It's good I'm not an NFL GM.
Yeah, okay. Maybe not a lifetime, but, I got to say, in my opinion, I like Dobbs a lot. He certainly is the most consistent of the bunch. Maybe Jaden Reed's giving him a run for his money now. And his performances against Frisco and the Cowboys, I don't want to say they came out of nowhere, but holy Lord, they were good, right?
They were much appreciated.
Yeah, I do think, though, in terms of pure skill set, he is probably the most replaceable of the bunch. And that's not a knock on him. I think it's just the reality because they have such a varied and diversified group of receivers. Reed does something different than Wicks, who does something different than Watson. And then there's Dobbs, who kind of does a little of all. And that probably is the most replaceable of the bunch. But at the same time, if he continues performing like he did down the stretch, yeah, then a second contract is not at all out of the question.
Steve saying Johnny Wilson, 6'7", 230 to 240 pounds.
Okay, so maybe a little bit bigger than they like their receiver. They don't really cap for size. So I just re-pulled it up. 4 wide receivers they want. No arms under 32 1/4. must be more than 195, got to run a 4.56 or faster, and you got to be basically over 6 feet tall. They like guys who can go up and get it and pair that with a lot of speed, a la a Christian Watson. I think that is their favorite type of wide receiver. It also is a slight unicorn from an athletic standpoint. So I think he again would offer something for the offense, another diversified path. Let's say that, a different type again.
All right, Chastain, speaking of wide receivers, I really like Leggett.
Yeah.
Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Xavier Leggett.
Oh, neat. Out of South Carolina, big wide receiver with a lot of speed, a goody wide receiver for sure. Also like Malachi Corley out of Western Kentucky. He reminds me of a Debo type.
Yeah, I'm thinking pretty spot on there. Xavier Leggett's really interesting. I mean, a guy who didn't start playing football until a little bit later in life, and then all of a sudden through his first years of college doesn't really do a lot. And then all of a sudden his fifth year, it's like it all just gets put together and he becomes the focal point of the offense. And all of a sudden this dude can play wide receiver. I think he's a very, very fun prospect. I wouldn't be shocked to see them go in that direction, although the aging is on the upper end of where they like to go, and realistically round 2, which is probably where Leggett's going to go. I believe he's 23 already. So a very, very fun player. I think the knock, if anything, on Leggett is there needs to be, and this is not at all surprising, is that there needs to be more refinement when it comes to route running. That's never really scared off Brian Gutekunst before, so
as we noticed last season.
So it's possible for sure.
Sully Minor, hello. Linebacker Wilson as a strong box safety.
Are you talking Peyton Wilson? You want him to play strong? Oh, I've never even considered it. I mean, yeah. You've rendered me speechless, Solomon. I mean, the thing with Wilson, like, there's not really a lot of knocks in his game. It's sometimes he might believe he's a little stronger than he really is because he will go barreling in there against big boys who then just knock him on his butt. But at the same time, he is very quick. He's a very strong tackler. His coverage has never really been denied or questioned. The big things are he's 24 years old and his injury history is a mile long. Could he play some box safety? Maybe on earlier downs. I could see it. Now you got wheels turning solar. Nah, you got me. All right. I'll get back to you on that one.
So you're saying, I heard Wicks and Reed had worked out really hard this offseason.
Yeah, Wicks is working with like a personal coach who posted a video last week. And there's even been videos out there of them training together, which is really, really cool to see. I always love to see it when players are spending their offseason together. Wicks and Reed are the future, no doubt about it. And kudos to Christian Watson, who actually just got married. I don't know if anybody saw that. He got married last week. Romeo Dobbs was there. Samari Toure was there. So the wide receiver clicks by draft class are strong, and they are hanging out all offseason long. So not at all the worst thing. Build that camaraderie in the offseason. All right, we will hang out for just 1 second more, and then it's going to be time to get jumped for us. Let me know if anybody's got any last-second questions out there that want to beat the buzzer. But I can rattle this off for you. I rattled off last week when was the last time the Packers picked in round 1 by each position? Here it is for round 2, just in case you're curious. Quarterback, 2008 with Brian Brum. Running back, 2020 with A.J. Dillon. Wide receiver, 2023, Reed, obviously. Tight end, 2023, Musgrave, obviously. Offensive tackle, 2016 with Jason Spriggs. Interior offensive lineman, 21 with Josh Myers. Interior defensive lineman, 2012 with Jarrell Worthy, as we all remember how that worked out. Edge with 2010, Mike Neal. Linebacker, 1992 in Mike Donforio. So if they're going Edgerrin Cooper in round 2, going to be a little different. Corner, 2018 with Josh Jackson. And then safety with Josh Jones in 2017, who I will never forget for his one brilliant game against the Cincinnati Bengals. And then it was never replicated again. And he still is just kind of out there. So, all right, everybody, I do believe that is it for us. On Friday, I'm going to be putting out another video. I do hope you enjoyed the one that I did on Monday. It's very, very research-based. I know it's dry. But on Monday, I put out, because I always get asked, what are the thresholds? Everyone talks about, well, the Packers like them this way, and then you can't find an easily accessible list because it's behind a paywall or whatever. So I did it. I put it all out there on Monday. What are all of the thresholds that they look for in offensive players? On Friday, I'm going to be doing, here's all of the thresholds for defense. Now, are there anomalies? Are there exceptions? Yeah, totally. This is just what the Packers generally look for, position by position. It'll be out there on Friday. And then, of course, next week, all draft, all time. Before then it's finally draft week. And then I'm going to be putting out content every single day leading up to our watch party where we are doing every single minute of the draft. We'll be here. I'll talk so much. So, all right, one more. Dan, sneaking in before the buzzer. John, when I see Edgerrin Cooper mocked in the second round, the draft grade is C minus Y. If you're looking, if you're on PFF, it's because PFF generally, at least as of right now, has Edgerrin Cooper as their consensus player like 58 or 60. So when people are picking him at 41, the Packers' earlier second round pick, PFF freaks out like it's this reach by almost 20 picks. To be totally frank, when I do mock drafts on PFF, I 100% ignore the grades. Like PFF has their consensus board, and I get that 100%. If you know, like if you're looking at the Packers list of needs, their parameters, what they historically generally do, that is a much better guide than PFF going, excuse me, sir, that's 19 picks early. It's just their opinion, and that's all any of this is. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. There's even been some rumors about how Cooper might sneak in for some team that falls in love with him in the back end of round 1. And then we can watch PFF freak out about it. Whatever. So, all right, there you go, Dan. All right, thank you to everyone who joined us today. On Friday, we'll be back. And then, of course, we'll be live again next Wednesday. Thanks, everybody. And as always, go Pack, go.